There are a number of things that we're going to look at, but I'll just first look at some of the things that we've been doing, but then there are some that also have been missing out in reports. So I just go to my next slide. So some of the contents we're going to look at are the report description and components, properties and triggers, data items and columns, request pages, working with labels, and then report layout, report layout types. Then, basically those are those that we're going to look at in this. I'll just be a bit fast. So, introduction to report components. So now report components, if I can just report components, these are powerful reports. Okay, I'll just start with the report and then I'll go into the report components and how they are structured. So reports are powerful tools built in for two main components. So they have what we call the data set and then the layout. The data you want to display and how to display, how that data appears on the screen or paper. So that's a layout. Then can just go to the next slide. Okay. So then now we're going to look at the report description and then the components. So I've just given you like a brief description of a report, of the dataset and the layout. So in a report component, we have an object. So we already know an object and what it is. But then in a report, these are the things that I've been doing usually. A report in Business Central is an object that defines the report name, ID, the data item, which tables to use, and then the layout design. So how it looks like. So these are things that I've been doing on a daily, where we do the report name and then we put in the ID, and then we specify the data item and then the layout design. So some of now the components of the report. So we have the properties and properties, which are attributes that control the behavior of the report. We have triggers, like on after, on pre-report or something like that. So we have those triggers, events that run code automatically based on that event that has happened. Then control. Okay, let's just start. Sorry about that. So I was talking about the controls. So we have the interactive elements. We have data items, tables that provide the data, then the columns and the values to display. We have the request page where you get the user input from. You get the user input, what the user wants to see. Then we have labels, and then we have the layout, the visual. So it can be a Word or Excel or an RDL. So, okay. So we have then now like component relationships. All components, so we have looked at the components and I've just given you a brief description of those components and all of like whatever they do. So all components work together. We have the data items containing the columns, the request page where we put the filters, where you want to filter by maybe vendors, or you want to filter by dimension. Then we have labels, I provide a textable text, a translatable text. So these labels, some, okay, I've noticed of most, okay, in our reports we don't use them, or there are some where we use them, and there are some when we do not use them, but from the documentation I realize they're very important. Then the layout that arranges everything visually. Then we have the report properties and triggers. So can just go to the next. So now what are the properties in this case? Because in the first, when I talked about the components, I talked about the properties. Now we're going to go in and see now what are these properties. So properties, an attribute of an object or its components that characterizes and specifies the behavior. So these properties, you may want this report run as maybe you can put in, okay, properties like application area. Those are all properties of the report. So examples. So we have the visibility on how it should look like, the captions and the titles. So you can put in that this report is visible on this status. All those are properties. Then we have the data sources and the relationships, and then formatting options. So all those are properties that you can put on a report. So properties can be put on multiple levels. It can be put on the report level or on the data item or even on the column or even on the request page. So you can put in different properties on those different levels. Then now I can now go to the triggers. So from the documentation, they give a trigger as a predefined event that causes the system to run a user-defined AL function. So for them, they look at it that you have that event that will happen maybe in running of the report. Then if you want like to run a specific logic of code or function, you put it under that trigger. So that's why they put it that user-defined AL function. So you put that function under that trigger for you to run that function in that scenario. So the three triggers that, okay, you can, I just put some examples. Report triggers on pre-report rule that runs immediately before the report starts, then on post-report that runs immediately before the report completes. So those are the triggers. These are things that we've been using. So we have the data item triggers and then the request page triggers. So validating user input for the request page triggers, setting default values. Then you have the data item triggers controlling each record that is processed, and then handling the retrieval and filtering of the data. These are some things that we've been doing every day. So here the key concept, we have the trigger, which it is an event, and then the AL function. For them, they look at it that you're going to put a function or logic. We usually just write the logic in between there in the trigger, but it's also good to use maybe like a function that will run when the report runs. Okay. So can go to the next where we have talking about data items and columns. So understanding the data model. So the data set is the data extracted or calculated from Business Central tables that can be used on the report. So you have the data set where you can say that I'm going to pick from the vendors table and just go to the next. So we have the data items and then the tables. Okay, something I've also talked about. I'll just skip this. I'll just be fast because we usually do these things. So now in the documentation, they talk about also creating relationships, and for multiple tables, reports establish a hierarchy. So you may find that you would need maybe to, like the example I put there, you may want to come up with a report of a customer orders report. So you will find yourself using the customer as the first data item, and then you indent the sales order data item, because for the customers you can get all customers, and then from those customers you can get their sales orders. So you can find out some of the times when you're designing the report, you may start with the sales order data item, and then you indent the customer data item. So you always have to be knowing the relationship, and for better way of designing of the report. So examining all the customers in the table. So when you run the report, it will go through all the customers. For each customer, then you'd find the related sales order. But if you do it the other way around, that means that only those customers with sales orders will appear, and customers without sales orders won't appear. Yet here in customers, you have all customers, and then you can get even those that do not have sales orders. Okay, so the columns, and then that is equal to the data to display. So a column can be any of these. It can be a table field derived from the database, where we put in maybe vendor name, and then you pick the corresponding table value that is storing the vendor name. It can be a variable, or it can be an expression, or it can be, so in case it can be a formula, or it can be a caption. Okay. Then for reports, so then in the documentation they talk about queries, and these are things that I will say for my case I haven't used. I don't know whether it's anyone who has used them, but in the documentation they say that you can also design a report from a query. So instead of building from tables directly, you can use a query object. So a query object is like other objects like tables, pages. So it's also an object in Business Central. So these are the steps of: you add a global variable pointing to the query object, use an integer in the data item definition, then add on a pre-data item or on after get record trigger. So queries are something that you can also use. Apart from using tables, you can also use queries to design a report. Then I'll just talk about report. Sorry, let's go back. My PowerPoint is being disturbed by language. Okay. Let's try to go back. Okay, report extensions. So you can also extend existing reports, using report extensions. You can extend an existing report dataset to add more columns without modifying the original report. I'll also now go to request pages. These are things that we do on the daily. So request page is a dialog that appears before the report runs, collecting user choices. So you may want them to put in the dimension, and then you put those controls. So the purpose is collect requests and options from users, allow users specify filters for the data, and also run as many times, or run at the same time the report runs. Okay, it is these are things you do. You collect user input like dimensions, which customer to run, or maybe like payroll, where you select a payroll period. Yeah. So I'll just go to, okay, let me talk about it. Request pages run before the report executes, giving user control over which record to include. So we usually add filters, sorting, display options, output format. So we usually also have on the preview on the request page we have buttons included there where we have like send to, where we can go to options of sending to Excel, printing, preview, or canceling. Let's go to so we have request pages. We can also define how can I call it? You can design the location. Just a minute. Let me just go to the next, working with labels and working with labels in reports. So working with labels, in the documentation, we recommend it because it improves the performance of the report. So labels are text fields in your report that are not coming from the database. So for this case, you define the labels in the report, they're not coming from the database. So use cases, you can use them on report titles, section headings, field captions, custom text values, or chart titles. Those are the use cases where you can use the labels. So we have the type of labels. We have the related to the data item, which can be captions for table fields or column headers. So these ones can be related to the data item or unrelated to the data item, which can be the report title, the statistical text, and then also custom instructions. So maybe you want to put maybe like a default table, like I've done it for performance appraisal, where you put like the scores and the grading. Okay, so why use labels instead of hard coding text? So when you hard code the text in the, sometimes you hard code the text in the RDL file, or you hard code it in the RDL file. So you find yourself that in cases of whereby you want to design like a multilingual report, like a report that can serve multiple languages, you won't be able to, because you hard coded the values in the RDL file. So when you're designing like these multilingual reports, or like, okay, if you want your report to suit in case there's a need of that report to be translated into another language, it will be very easy for using labels, because the label is always a reference to that text, so it becomes easy. I'll be showing you in our next our next meeting. So the three key benefits, I've talked about the multilingual support, better performance, and then easy to maintain. So whenever you have like a big report, the labels come in and they can help you like to less memory usage. Because when you have a big report and then you start hard coding those values, you find yourself that the report will take long to display. So if you want to improve your performance, you can use labels. So I just included the label syntax where you can, on your report, you put in the labels and then you put in the text. It can be like the label name and then the text. So like comment, then you put in the comment. Can be like max length, or you can even put in looked true, or it's a boolean, things like that. So this is the same thing I've been talking about the more fields added to the data set, the bigger it becomes, and the higher the impact on the report's performance. Use labels to keep the data set lean. So now we're going to be talking about the report layout. So we usually use RDL, and in some cases also Word. But let me just go to the next one here. So what is a report layout? The visual layout determines, okay, the visual layout determines what content appears in the report, how content is formatted, how data is arranged on the page, what user sees when they view or print the report. So you can do a Word report, as you're going to see in the next slide where I indicated. So it's the next slide. Yes, good. So the three main layouts, the layout types, we have the RDL, we have the Excel layout, and then the Word layout, and then the external layout. So RDL are some that we've been doing usually, and then when I was reading through the documentation, I looked at the Excel layouts, and I think these ones I want to show you some of the things that you can do with these layouts. Then I'll also show you Word, but for this presentation, I'm going to show you Excel. So I'm going to share my VS Code, and then I show you some of the things I found out in the documentation, because I realized these are some of the things that we do not do. I don't know if anyone has used like an Excel layout, but I'm going to share my screen and then show you some of the things you can do with Excel layouts. Stop sharing and share my screen. So when I open my VS Code, I was trying out some report here, but I'll just show you some of the, I can just create a new one here. So I'm going to just add some fields here. So I've just created this report here, just having the customer data item. And then, so for me to be able to use the report layout of Excel, I'll just add the property. Just copy it from here. So I'm going to just use layout type, and then the default layout as Excel. So when I build this, it will create this Excel here. Shift 8. So this is the Excel here that has been created. So I'm going to just open it in my Excel to show you the output of the structure. So in the report layout for Excel, there are some of the things that I noticed that it has. So it has these sections down here, these sheets down here. One, it has the data, whereby these are the columns that have specified my data item, I've specified name, and then we also have the translation data. This is now where where labels would help you, where you'll have the caption and then the language and then the value. So these ones they will help you in like translation. And then we have captions. Then we have this is metadata that specifies if you're in cloud, it will be showing the tenant ID here. Then it can show the extension ID, the extension name, publisher, version, objects. Yeah, so this is metadata just to store values that, okay, things that about this report and the environment it is on. So even you have like the filters and then the triggers. So these values will be populated when someone runs the report, when they run this Excel report. So for my purposes, this is how it like, or just this is how you create the Excel report. So when you publish this, you can on the process of downloading the report, it will show you the options of download only. It won't be showing the option of preview. So when you design an Excel report, it will come out in this same format where the data is in here. Most times, okay, users want to interact with this field here, but there are some of the things that you can do in this report, like analysis. I'm seeing you're running out of time, but I can just show you one of the reports that is existing. So when you publish this report and run it, the values will come in here. But in case you want to run any like kind of analysis, you can run like a second table. No, not a second table, but a second sheet. Maybe you can call it maybe chart. So you can even generate visuals from this Excel Excel report. In the documentation they talk about if you're good in your Excel, you can do even things like pivot tables, whereby when they run that report, those values come when those values come in, and also your analysis or charts or graphs come in with that report. I can just show you one of the reports that is in the system here so that you can appreciate. Just go to Business Central. So I'm going to just go to report layouts. So we have had many scenarios where like clients ask for things like visuals, and I realized when you design like an Excel report, you can be able to design visuals. I can just show you a standard report and then in one of the reports that I created that I was trying out with. Let me just go to type Excel. So this is one that I was trying out with. I didn't do much in the visuals, but I'll show you one that the custom one that has visuals. Let me just run it from here. So when you design your Excel report, like I mentioned, you do not have the option of send of preview. So you only have the option of download, and which will download that Excel template of yours. Just keep and open it here. Okay. So for my case in this report, I had gotten these were vendors. Second, yeah, the vendors and their balances. So I created like another tab here called chat, though I didn't do any chat in here. Just created one. So not one. But I was just trying out like you can generate visuals in your layout. You can specify like maybe I want to show like a pie chart. So in your design, you create another sheet and then you put in the parameters that you need for that chart. So when the report runs, it will populate that chart. So let me show you one that is standard, like customer top lists. Let me run this one here. This is a default one for, it's a standard report and it's also an Excel report. Yes. So right now you're not able to see the content. It's because you have first enable content, and then you can be able to have such visuals that I was showing you here. So this means in the layout, you have to have designed this chart already, and that chart is going to be based on this table here. So if you have like your skills with Excel, and you can design visuals from this data from Business Central. Let's open this one here. So now for cases of the layout that I had created, let me just go back here. I can just put maybe total, and then maybe I want to get the total. Okay, this is just basic. I want to total up the balances. So I can just put in here, and then I go back this side. Just
Joseph, I'm worried the time is
yes.
running up.
Okay.
We need to summarize today's session.
Okay, I don't know whether I've gotten the idea of the Excel layout reports, but in summary, it's you design your structure within the AL file, and then you specify the property that this would be an Excel report. Then in that Excel report, when you build, it will generate a file of Excel where you can come in. By default, you will have this data, translation data, caption, and metadata. Then you can add another sheet where you may want to, because you cannot use the same file as the Microsoft data is going to, okay, the Business Central data is going to come from. So you have to create another chart where you can now run like you can generate, you can set up a chart, you can set up pivot tables, even do things like VLOOKUP. So you put them there in your separate sheet. Then when you publish, when you publish your code and then run that report, that data will come. When you run the report, it will prompt you to download the Excel sheet, and then in that Excel sheet, your chart and or your chart sheet will be having those things that you specified, whether it was a chart or summations. Yes, that's what it is in summary for the Excel report.
All right, thank you, Joseph. I believe for today we can stop here. I see we shall also need some practical sessions to do with the MAUT language in reports. I know you've done this for one of the 6 at IMC. Perhaps you can use that as a practical example. Then we shall also need to see how processing reports work. On my side, I didn't know that we had Excel layout, so it's something that I've learned today, and I've been here taking notes to see how we can also improve our trainings where we normally train people on account schedules. And I'm looking at clients, the likes of UDB, if one could train them also in how they can utilize the Excel to design their reports, then that can be a very, very good plus on the solution that we have. I don't know whether it is available on-prem, but I'm happy to see it as a new feature. Thank you, Joseph, for this. I believe we shall give you another slot on Tuesday to go through the remaining parts. Then from there, I think we'll have Alan come in with developing code units. Probably that will be next day. All right, thank you, everyone. And I wish you a great day ahead. Bye-bye.